And welcome to a week of 2 March through 8 March of Roll of 24. This is episode 44 of John's Eclectic Photo Time Adventure. And once again, we have another very interesting eclectic week of photographs. One of the first things I was working on Monday was my own personal challenge, which was chaos. And my secondary challenge was to use Lightroom to make chaos more chaotic. And this is one of the pictures that we're going to be looking at. And then we go down to the dog park because later on in the day, I'm going to be heading down to Austin and I'm going to show you both a success and the fail of doing a not a time lapse, but a 27-minute exposure and what happens when you don't do the right thing. And then a successful long exposure. This was 15 minutes. And then the next morning was the blood moon. And I'll be talking about the blood moon. And then on Wednesday, I had an opportunity. Storm rolled in. And as you can see in the picture behind me, I did print this off as a 17 by 22, and you saw that in the introduction. And so went out to a local area, set up, and caught some lightning. And then while out at the dog park, once again looking at things that are not really dog related, even though I do have the dog stuff again this week, is a couple of the static symbols that are around. And like I said, I did go out to the dog park 3 times this week. And this was one of the new friends that Charlie got to meet. And one of the other things throughout this whole week is you're going to see a wide variety of the different cameras and the camera lenses. When I'm out there at the dog park, I usually have this big Ganga lens. It's a 200 to 800. It's the Canon, and it goes from 7.3 f7.3 to f9. But I can really reach out and touch the dogs and some of the other items out there. Also, for the stacking in the moon, you'll see that I've been using the R5. And I have the battery case on here. So I have 2 batteries in here. So anytime I'm doing star tracks, star trails, or anything else where I need 2 batteries instead of carrying a whole camera bag and all the other accessories sometimes, I'll just take this one so I have 2. And then a lot of the pictures this week are with the R6 Mark II. I use this a lot of times for video. I have this one set up, and I just like really how the R6 Mark II works. And I have the 100 to 500 set up on here, and I do really like using the 100 to 500. So once again, you're going to be seeing all 3 cameras and not just these 3 lenses, but probably there's a whole wide variety of lenses that were used throughout the week. So this first picture was what I was planning to use for my chaos, and I used the Photoshop in there to take out some chairs and move them forward. I just really couldn't get the background to where I liked it, so I ended up eventually taking another picture, which we'll see shortly here down in Austin, and I think I was more successful with that. But yeah, this was just right across the street. These people had moved out, and this was all the whatnots that they didn't want to take with them to their new place. So because I was getting ready to go down to Austin and I needed to stop off at the photo store and buy, well, I didn't know at that time that I needed to buy it. But so Charlie and I headed over to the dog park so I can get him some exercise and wear him out a little bit before he spends an hour and a half in the car driving the 65, 70 miles down to Austin from where we live. Anyways, this dog was out there, and its owner was, or its human as I call him, was throwing a ball with one of those sticks, and it was just all over the place, having a fun time chasing after it. Charlie, not so much. And here you can see that I'm using the R6 Mark II with the 200 to 800 on it. So this dog was pretty much all the way on the other side of the dog park. And I just love how I was able to capture the dog in motion. I did have it on high volume, H+, and so it went through probably about 60 photographs. But I found this one, and I just loved how the dog is positioned, getting ready to catch the ball. So we drove down to Austin, and that's when I realized I didn't have my ND filters with me. So we had to stop over at the photograph store, and I picked up an ND filter and a mount for the lens. And this is my purposeful picture. Once again, this is chaos. So while I was waiting for the warm moon, I walked across the top of this parking lot that I was on. I was up on the 6th floor and took this image of downtown Austin. And I just really loved how it turned out. And then I used Photoshop and flipped it and extended it and expanded it so that I had a mirror image of the city of Austin collapsing down upon itself. So this is the same image we just looked at that was in color. And, excuse me, I go through spot removal to see if there were any spots or anything on my sensor or lens that I needed to remove. And there were not, which was good. But when you go into Lightroom and you click the thing for visualize spots, it gives you this, I'm just going to call it an etch and sketch. And I thought it was just really cool. I remember back in art class, back in 8th and 9th grade, where you had a whiteboard, you covered it with the black ink, you let it dry, and then you put your symbol on there, and you used a little etching pen, and you etched out what it was that you wanted on there. And I just thought this was really cool. So this next image is what I'm going to show you is a basic failure in taking a timed bulb exposure of the full moon. It was the warm moon for this month. And I have these NISI Pro Mag filters that go on the camera. And so I have it on there, got it all set up, took this off in order to focus, and the camera goes into standby mode. And then when the moon started coming up and it was time to push the button, I pushed the button, and I'm standing there doing the video and the other camera, and 27 minutes later I turn it off. I check the image, and what do I see? This is the frame that I see. So as I mentioned, this is what failure looks like. Not everything I do is a success, nor all photographers is everything a successful frame. And so what I had done is I had put the filter on, got everything, okay, it's going to be perfect because it was dark. And so then I took the filter off and I focused. My problem was instead of just leaving it in my hand, I put it in my shirt pocket. But here I am standing around waiting 27 minutes, as you can see in the exposure, 1,799 seconds, and took it off, or turned it off, looked at the picture. I'm like, what is going on? Feeling around, and I was like, oh my God, I left my filter in my pocket. So you can see that I didn't capture the moon streak, and so then I did put on the filter, but now the moon is very bright, and so I only had the 10-stop filter because I had to actually go out and buy this in Austin on that day, because I left my whole set of NISI Pro Mag filters at home. And as you can see in this next image, it's rather quite bright, and just like the snow moon the prior month, I used a 10 and a 3, a 13, and I should have done that here, but once again, I had to stop and go out and buy this because I got down to Austin, found where I was going to take the pictures, and realized when I was going through the camera bags during pre-setup that I left this at home. And so once I realized everything, what I'd done wrong, I did put on the 10-stop filter, but you can see how bright the moon is, and I should have put in last month's snow moon, because when it's first coming up, it's nice and bright and orange, and then near the end, it tapers off and gets this nice bright white. And I really should have had a 13 ND filter on there, but once again, I had to buy the NT filter down there, and I'm not going to buy a whole new set because they're quite expensive. So this image here is taken with the R5. As I mentioned earlier, it has a battery pack, so it has 2 batteries. And what I do is I have everything set up, and I have the interval timer turned on, and it takes 1 picture every 30 seconds. And so for 20 minutes, it took 120 pictures, no, 500, 400 pictures. So anyways, so I have this done up, and then what I do is I'll go into Lightroom. Well, I start off in Lightroom, move to Photoshop, put all the pictures in there in layers, and then I'll save the first picture, and then I'll delete the next 3 pictures, save the next picture, go through until I get all the way to the end, and this is what it looks like. And so I just mentioned that every 30 seconds it'll take a picture, but what it's actually doing is taking 7 pictures. I also have it turned on to exposure bracketing. This way I'm not actually sitting there fiddling with the camera while the moon is rising, and because I'm paying attention to the other cameras too. So I'm doing exposure bracketing, and this is at 1/250th. The other one was at 1/25, and so it's a little bit darker image. I just really liked how this one turned out, and I did crop in on this one. That's why it looks a little bit larger in the frame. And here is the image of the moon rising. This was done on the R5 Mark II, and this is a 29-minute moonrise, and this is sped up at times 20. So this next image is going to be of the blood moon. And to be up and honest, this blood moon I took actually last year, and it was right overhead. And you will see several moon images. And I was down at Austin, and the location, everything was fine around 2 o'clock. Had everything set up, had 2 cameras getting ready to go. And then all of a sudden, low-level clouds just keep coming through. And when it was fully red, like you see here, once again, this is from last year, that I couldn't capture it. So as I just mentioned, this actual image is from last year. This was a blood moon, beautiful clear skies. And so I took this, but then when I went out this year, so you had the full moon, and then 6 hours later, the blood moon was happening. And I was down there in Austin, had 2 cameras set up on the back porch of a person's house, and sitting out there drinking some coffee, chit-chatting, just waiting for the moon to start doing its phasing towards totality. And then all of a sudden, all these super low-level clouds came in. And so I had both cameras set up on interval timer, and then I ended up switching, and I just started taking pictures between the clouds. But anyways, this is my actual blood moon that I took last year. And so once again, I had 2 cameras set up. One of them was on an interval timer, and I let it just keep running, and then I kept looking into it and adjusting the aim over towards the moon when I could. And but then once this was right before the low level clouds started coming in, and just sat back, watched all the clouds coming in, got frustrated, and ended up turning off one of the cameras, kept the other one running. Well, then I just put it on manual, and then I was just eyeballing the clouds. This is still the same picture, number 10. And one of the problems, though, is when you're out there and you're using a high ISO to capture something, and then you go into the Lightroom or any other program and you try and brighten the image. All these little dots, those are all your sensor dots. Your sensor's heating up in order to do whatever it does. And so anyways, I thought it looked pretty cool, and I figured I'd include it in here so that everybody can see what happens when you try and over lighten something inside a Lightroom of the night sky. So that prior picture, that was taken with the R5 Mark II with a 70 to 200, and this image was taken with the R5 with the 100 to 500 lens on here. And like I said, I'm just standing there for 3.5 hours waiting to find the moon through the clouds. And then as soon as I had to anticipate, okay, there's an opening in the clouds, because I had a 2-second timer turned on so that it wouldn't have camera shake. And so this was the only other image I captured that night as the eclipse was occurring towards totality. So I think it was around 5:15. I was getting ready to go in and tell the lovely bride that, hey, I'm going to go take the dog for a walk, and I heard a clap of thunder. And I'd already told her ahead of time that, hey, when storms come in this spring, I've got a bag ready to go, and I'm heading out. And so I did. I heard some thunder. And anyways, this is the behind-the-scenes image taken with my Apple iPhone. I had two cameras, both facing towards the west. One's facing basically northeast or northwest, and the other one. And then eventually I did switch them around because the lightning started coming up from the south. Out of all the pictures, I think this was one of the coolest ones. This was done with the R5, and it has the 10 to 20 ultra wide angle. It's an f4, and I had this sitting down on that small tripod that you saw. That's where I always put the R5. And so once again, this was just facing west, and the sun was still slowly setting. And I had this set for 10 seconds. So this image has the R6 Mark II, and this one had the RF 15 to 35. And because it was still so early in the day, I was able to put an ND filter. I put an ND3 filter on this so I could extend my time and keep my ISO down there at 100. And once again, this was out there looking west, and I just love this. This was a 20-second exposure. So I had the R5 going at 10 seconds because it had the ultra wide 10 to 20, and the R6 Mark II I had going for 20-second exposures. And later on, I extended those to 30 seconds, but just didn't get it. None of the lightning bolts were this dramatic. So this right here was taken with the R6 Mark II with the 15 to 35, and I did take a little artistic liberties with this. This is actually 3 images merged together inside of Lightroom. A single lightning bolt, even for the 20-second, 30-second exposures. It was always just one lightning bolt, and then nothing for 10 frames, then another lightning bolt, nothing again for 10 frames. I had my interval timer turned on to 34 seconds, and I had my time go for 30 seconds so that it would click and then reload. But anyway, so I did this. This is 3 pictures put together in Photoshop. So at the dog park on this day, this was the first time that Charlie has ever met this dog, and the owner of this dog also had another dog. And so there was only 3 or 4 dogs for the most of the time, and I was using the R5 with the 200 to 800 on this. And I just love this husky, and Charlie and him got along great. And so I shot a whole bunch of photos, and what I did is I got the owner's phone number and told him, hey, give me 2 or 3 days, go into Lightroom, save these up to the cloud, sent him a link so that he could then later download these to, however, download them as JPEGs and either print them off or use them as wallpaper on his phone or computer. It's always amazing when a human, brings a new dog into the park. All the dogs run up to the gate. Some of them patiently sit there, literally, and wait for the new dog to enter. Of course, you can see everybody's interested in the one in the middle. And the husky on the right, that other dog on the left above Charlie's head, those two are a pair to the same human. And he was the one I took all the pictures for. I think I ended up sending him like 26 pictures. But yeah, this was probably about 900 feet away from where I was laying down on the ground. So sometimes laying down on the ground has its own, sometimes reward, sometimes cost. I do carry a treat bag on my belt. Looks like one of those things that a mountain climber uses to put chalk in. Anyway, so usually when I lay down on the ground, these dogs have already know I have treats on them. And sometimes they'll literally dogpile me. But then after a while, they know I'm just sitting down on the ground. They'll leave me alone. And then I get a better perspective as seen here, where I'm actually at eye level. I'm not standing up. And I'm not actually laying down. Well, I'm down on my elbow, holding up the camera. Another thing, too, out here at this dog park, it's all hit and miss. Sometimes Charlie can have fun and play with the new dogs, but other times we walked in one morning and there was a dog and didn't even get to the sniffing part. It just started baring its teeth and growling, and its human was right there, reached down, grabbed it by the collar, and they said, well, it's time for us to leave because that dog just did not like Charlie at all. So at this point, once again, there was only 4 dogs in the park, and I'd probably shot over 400 or 500 pictures of them. And so this fire truck was cruising down the road with its light flashing and its horn blaring, and tried to took a couple shots because I had to make sure I had to wait until the fire truck started going up this bridge in order to clear the fence because my camera kept on wanting to focus on the fence and the image was always fuzzy. But this is our local fire department, busy at work. One of the things I found out last year, I was trying to photograph a wasp nest, and it was probably about 15 feet above me, and I was laying literally on the ground with this big old 800 millimeter stuck to my eye, and I still couldn't focus. And so I was wondering, what is going on? And so I actually had to go back in and read everything. When you're out at 800 feet with this RF 200 to 800 from Canon, you have to be a minimum of 19 feet 6 inches away from your target. And so this cup was about 20 feet away. And then after taking several pictures of the cup, that leaf that was in there was blowing by. And so it's like, okay, let's see what happens here. And what's amazing though, even at f9, this, you can see if you look at this, the dandelion is actually a little out of focus. And so the grass is out of focus, in focus, and then back out of focus. So even at f9, it's just a really shallow, f8, it's just a really shallow depth of field using an 800 millimeter when some a target's only, maybe 22 feet away from me. So after the cup and the dandelion, I'm still sitting there checking the dogs, nothing exciting going with them. By this point, they'd been playing around for about 40 minutes and they were all exhausted, sitting down in the shade. And so I'm just looking around, see what else. And so, of course, you got the iconic golden arches right across the street. And I was like, you know what? Even though it's an ugly blue sky, let's see if I can turn this into a somewhat decent image. And I think I did. I did have to go through and do a lot of editing in order to get the sky fairly even inside of Lightroom using the new variance program for the color point. And anyways, just our iconic golden arches. So I had taken the golden arches and the other pictures, and there really wasn't anything of interest. And so I'm just sitting there. This is the back of my camera. And when I go to the park, I don't take a camera bag normally with me. I just have the camera and the lens. And so here I am. And what happens? This bee just shows up and just starts walking around all around my camera body. And I just thought, the one time I wish I had my macro lens, but pulled out the iPhone 17 Pro Max and took some pictures. And I'm not going to call this a macro picture, but it is zoomed in pretty good. So I thought it turned out pretty good. It was pretty. That beast spent probably about 3 or 4 minutes walking around my camera. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of Roll of 24 for the week of 2 March through 8 March 2026. And if you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing and do this again. Give me some thumbs up. I really appreciate it. And once again, thank you for your time and see you next week.